Good evening and welcome to Moving Forward. I'm Abdul, and it's really nice to be here with you once again, and we got a good program. My co-host?
Dara Hamilton, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with you, Mr. Ali.
And I'm moving forward. So both of us moving forward together. Well, we thank you for all your comments regarding moving forward, and of course we're on to a new road, if I could put it that way, because we have a gentleman with us. Of course, his name is Collin Hodge, and you no doubt would have heard about him, all sorts of things, massive productions, Taste of St. Croix, super businessman right here on the beautiful island of St. Croix, and one who is very much interested in moving forward with the economy and everything else. And so we thought that it would be really good to have him with us tonight, to first of all talk a little bit about himself, and we're going to really focus a little bit on a couple of areas. One is the Taste of St. Croix, which is coming up next month, and that the last one I went to was out of this world, and that does help people who are interested, businesses more in the food area. It's just wonderful. And in addition to that, since Collin is a big businessman, we've also heard about, and you've heard about as well, some of the banks which have gone down. And I got an article in the newspaper where a couple of other banks have gone down. So there's about 3 of them now. So something is not working out right in that area. And we would really like an understanding as best we could about that. So Collin, nice to have you with us once again. And I'll never forget you. You put me in touch with a guy called Bernard Dyer, one of the most experienced individuals in terms of just trying to promote the Virgin Islands and move it forward. So welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your businesses, massive productions, Taste of St. Croix, etc.
You know, sometimes when I'm asked that question, I don't even know where to begin. But I can say just a little bit about my personal self before I get into my professional career and history. My roots, I'm from the West Indies, of course, the island of Antigua. My family migrated here when I was in 4th grade. I went to the Lumacal Elementary School and on to Elena and then on to Central. I was going to leave to go to the University of DeVry and ended up staying here for a semester because I was working in the hospitality industry, which of course I will get to in a minute. Grew up working because I needed to work because I came from a poor family. So, you know, we all worked from junior high, you know, when you grew up in this community and your family, you know, didn't have it. So I began working at the age of 12 and subsequently after when I became 14, 15, went to Mentro's Bakery and then on to the Galleon. So I, at the age of 19, when I was about to leave, I applied to DeVry. DeVry used to fly in here, by the way, every semester, to recruit students. And I remember going to the King Christian Hotel and applying and signing up to leave for the spring of 2020, which was 1989 into 20. I said, let me work from September to January to make a little bit of money while I was here. And while I was here, I said, let me go to UVI for a couple of classes. I'm free in the day. And guess what? Ended up falling in love with UVI and canceling my application to DeVry. And I stayed here and got my bachelor's in business with a concentration in administration here from the University of the Virgin Islands. You know, and that's basically a brief history of my background in terms of where I came from, my education, and then while going to UVI and harassing Juanita Woods about reaching out to our high schools because I really thought that I wasn't the average student. I mean, as a matter of fact, in junior high, I was one of the 2 students that had a 98 overall average in 7th and 8th grade. So I wasn't an average student, even though I worked. And when I went to Central, when I was graduating, I finished school at 10 o'clock in the morning because in 12th grade, I had completed all my classes at 10:30. So I wasn't the average student, and I'm surprised that my counselor didn't tell me to go to UVI or didn't give me information about going to UVI. So UVI had me on their backs because I really wanted me to be the last person that didn't know about the great opportunity that UVI was in terms of education, costs, and being able to stay home, while getting a good education. So I definitely lobbied while I was going to UVI for them to reach out to our local high schools so that we can definitely get our local students going to UVI if they can't move away.
No, it's free.
So that was and that's why UVI is dear to me in a lot of ways, and why I became very close to a lot of the management and team at UVI. They recruited me to assist them in doing promotions and events and fundraisers, and that became the starting of what is now Massive Productions.
Wow, I was going to ask you that. I was going to
Yes.
say Massive Productions has been around for a long time. Everybody has to know about Massive Productions. I was wondering how it started.
Yeah, ironically, with my background in the hospitality industry, restaurants and all of that, I learned a little bit about, that arena. And when I went to UVI, I remember calling Pappy Pops and saying, listen, I knew of Pappy. I said, listen, man, I want to do some parties at UVI. They told me that wasn't allowed. I said, well, how can we do events? They said, well, the only way we can do it is through our associations. And I found out which association allowed us to do events. And I joined the Social and Cultural Committee and became the chair, and started putting on events at UVI, which were lucrative for UVI. We made some good monies, and then came out to the private sector and started doing events.
Was this, when you started at UVI, a social thing? Were you motivated by social reasons, or were you already in that business mind?
That's a very good question, and in hindsight, I guess I will never know. I do know that working in the restaurant industry and being in that environment where we put on parties, we put on dinners for different groups, that definitely gave me the foundation and education in that arena. And I guess I was attracted to it initially, and then when I went to UVI, and I wanted to have that type of environment as an adult, and it wasn't allowed in a higher education environment, namely UVI. And I found out how to do it and how to make UVI stand out and at the same time raise money for the initiatives. And believe it or not, after I realized I was good at it in 1992, when I started doing all the events for UVI, in 1993 I started doing it in the private arena, starting with Paris Perch. Bill Bass gave me the opportunity.
Oh, Bill.
I must thank him, because when you look back, you start to connect the dots. Bill Bass used to be a place that all the restaurateurs, after work at 11 o'clock, the only place open is Paris Perch. We all would gather there for drinks after waitering and bartending. And I became, Bill Bass was the first one that gave me the opportunity to use his facility to promote his event. And it was actually a Sunday night, the only night he was closed.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first event. I came up with a theme called College Night, Jamaican style. And that was my very first event that I did that worked out successfully.
And what year was this? Do you remember, or do you want to tell us?
March of 1993. 30 years as of 2 months ago. So this year I began celebrating my 30 years softly about 2 months ago, but we'll be doing a celebration all the way down to the end of the year, celebrating Massive Production and the 30 years and everything else and all the different entities that sprung off as a result of Massive Management and Production.
Your book, when is that going to come out? No, well, I'm just telling you the truth. You've set a legacy already for a period of time with the things you've done. You've got some help from Bill, and no doubt your parents and other individual schools and so forth help to promote you and condition you to be the best that you could be. So this sounds to me like...
Well, honestly, Abdul, I have never even thought about doing a book, but what I can say, I truly believe in change, and sometimes to this day I get asked, Massive, when are you going to do an event at the racetrack? Or when are you going to do an event at the stadium? And when are we going to have a big reggae sound splash like you did in 1994, that's 29 years ago? Or when are you going to do something like you did 10 years ago, 15 years ago? And you know what? I must say, thank God that I've always had the foresight to see the change when it's coming, and to diversify and get into the next thing. And that is why I have different entities that are called businesses, and why I strategically focus on different businesses, whether they may be under the Massive Management and Production umbrella, or they may need to stand out under a different umbrella, like Taste, which was not my original idea, but is now an entity that I run. Subway, which I purchased about 10.5 years ago, as a result of knowing the restaurant industry. And the different things that I do and the different entities that I currently now own, they have always been me having the ability to see the demand and the need in the society without contradicting what, one of my other businesses.
So what next?
That's a very good question, because I got this question posed to me through one of the different programs or applications that was put out there through the government, and some of the different fundings that were available, as you know, as a businessman, that were being offered a year ago. Apply for this. We know you were closed for 2 years. Apply for that. Must have suffered hardship. Analyzing the world, and I never thought I would be saying this. I remember having a show with you under the same umbrella that we started over 12 years ago, when I used to come in on Saturdays to talk business. And I said globalization started and it's not going to ever end. And here we have a scenario in the last 2 years that's called deglobalization. That is what's causing the inflation that we now currently see, and we're now seeing the results of the closing of the banks, and we now see the inflation, we now see the challenges of distribution because of the disconnect in the globalization that was occurring. Russia is no longer part of globalization. China has been shut down until 4 months ago, indirectly because they decided to shut down. Many nations, indirectly or directly, are not connected to the world anymore. The distribution channel now has challenges. So deglobalization is the issue for what's going on, and I don't know how long that's going to last. The BRIC nation, which, as I told you before, was Brazil, India, China, and Russia. China and Russia has been out of the BRIC nation. Those were the fastest growing nations prior to the pandemic. And now you see two of those fastest growing nations. Russia is in war, China has been shut down, Brazil is a part of the turmoil because of obvious reasons. So India has just taken over as the biggest, the most populated area in the world as of a month ago. They're going to be a big part of the playing field. I think India is. But in general, globalization is no longer the mode or the operation right now. Until that comes back, we're going to have high prices. We're going to have challenges, and unfortunately, the recession has not officially started yet.
You sound like you're still quite a student of business. Tell us how you get to be so astute, how you keep up with it.
I didn't even know that I was.
You sound like it. You're definitely astute. So tell us how you keep up with all of this.
You know what? I for some reason, I love the news. I love current events, and for some reason, I've always been attracted to that. I don't get up every day and pick up a book. I don't get up every day and but I just stay in touch with trying to know what's going on, especially in the world. Especially in the world. I believe in our region, and then I believe in our region being affected by the world.
You must have some good ideas for our region. How do those get executed, or do they just sit in your head? And do you look around and say, gosh, I'm really frustrated by how our economy works here? What happens with you with that?
There's no doubt I do get frustrated at times. And what I realize, and one of the main reasons why I backed off from doing Abdul Ali's show 6 years ago, as a matter of fact, or 7 years ago, had to do with a lot of that. Because a lot of the things that I was bringing forth, I noticed were being challenged by the formal structure or entities.
Right.
And sometimes when you're in a small society, you get pushback. And it's sad. Because take, for instance, some of the things that we really need to work on and do, they're not that hard or difficult. Everybody else are doing them. And we've been saying, I said before, when you look at the Caribbean region, and that's our neighbor, CARICOM is older, is one of the oldest geographic treaties or group in the world. It's older than the Eurozone. CARICOM is older than NAFTA. CARICOM is older than most geographic treaties that currently exist based on physical location. I remember when CARICOM first started, CARICOM went through changes. The CARICOM dollar used to change every month. The CARICOM dollar has been stabilized for over 30 years. It hasn't changed. It's been 265. Right. Yeah. But it used to, every minute it used to go like this when we were growing up. They found a way to stabilize the CARICOM dollar, and it's been 265 now for over 30 years.
Absolutely.
Okay? Things like that, which you don't see. The dollar right now is stronger than the euro, the European dollar. That's the first time in years. America is doing great, and America will always be the strongest nation in the world.
Since you're talking about change, what about change of status? What are your ideas on that?
Well, you heard the delegates introduce bill in Congress.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I didn't see it coming, but I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I think we need to accept that approach, and capitalize on that approach.
But you know,
I really
think so. People were saying, well, that approach is nothing.
I think that well, this is my opinion, by the way. They have the doctor in front of their name, so I don't know if I'm smarter than them. But I think if we start, there are many ways to get to the end goal. You know, I think we will still get to the end goal that they're trying to achieve with this approach. And I trust the delegate in her wisdom, and I trust Malik Siku and some of the proponents of that approach.
Okay. Which is to formalize what we have. And
not to say that
not
to say that he's wrong or she's wrong over there.
Right.
But I think this is a more structured and formal approach to get to the same end goalpost.
And another thing, as you know, we still have some, even though we get quite a bit of money from the federal government, we still have some shortages of funds and all that. What are your thoughts about reparations, particularly in relation to, say, Denmark?
You know, that's a sensitive topic. I think reparation needs to go, if we start talking reparation, I think you need to go beyond Denmark. If the topic is going to be brought up, reparation need to go from the point that we start touching Africa and bringing black people to the rest part of the world. That's my opinion about that. Without taking the great nation of Africa and our people from Africa and taking them all over the world, I don't think that we would have the type of world we have today where color is an issue. So I think if we start to talk about reparation, we need to go from the source and then come forward, not go to Denmark and then go to Spain and then go to England, because that's what we're going to do if you talk about reparation. So.
I know we haven't gotten into probably the breadth of all the businesses that you do run, and I wondered, as a businessman, how do you balance making money with supporting the community, and what do you see as the responsibility of businessmen in our community, or to our communities?
So, and believe me, it's been challenging, especially the last 6 years since Irma Maria. It's, putting it in context, I don't think that a lot of our leaders, even our leaders nationally, understand that Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands didn't just go through the pandemic. We went through Irma Maria and the pandemic. And when you look at, you're saying a businessman and the society, when you look at the average 18-year-old, they have not been formally taught from the time they were 12 in the Virgin Islands because of Irma, Maria, and the pandemic.
Right. There's been a lot of disruption.
So when you look at the person that's 18, you're wondering why are they doing what they're doing. We don't understand that they have been informally taught by uncontrolled environment like Instagram, YouTube, and everything else. So unfortunately, when you look at somebody that's 18, that person that's 18 did not go through the education system or did not have the attention from the home as they normally would, for obvious reasons, because of Irma Maria and the pandemic. Our leaders and our nation start understanding that basic example. And you take and carbon copy or paste that scenario to many aspects of our arena, you'll understand where we have the social issues. So a lot of it, unfortunately, businesses like mine cannot contribute as much because our income was impacted in the last 6 years. The kind of decisions and input needs to come from structured entities like our government. Because unfortunately, the 6 years I just told you about, that normally I would be able to be in a position to contribute more to, a lot of us can't from a business perspective because of the last 6 years of what we were going through. To be able to help society in the social ills, unfortunately, we don't have solid ground to do
Well,
that.
I think my question was more around the fact that this social consciousness, some people who are very successful have it and some people don't. Yeah. You know, and so they don't. They feel, you understand what I'm saying? And so I was just kind of checking in with you about where you were.
Thank God I'm able to stand still because many of us are not, unfortunately, in the business arena going through the last 6 years with the Irma Maria. I've seen some of my associates lost their businesses, downsize, move off island.
So it's not that easy.
It's not that easy at all. My strategy has been to diversify. That's what I said. That's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to diversify, and I'm, thank God, successfully. And you know what? It's not been easy. And taking loans to keep that going.
Right.
But lucky I was able to, because if I didn't have a good, solid foundation, I couldn't go to the bank and say, give me that.
Right.
Some of us weren't able to do that. Weren't able to do that, and therefore weren't able to stand strong. But there is no doubt. I'm not going to say that. Maybe we can do more as a business sector. I can't speak for everyone, but I know being in business in the last 6 years and the challenges that we have had, it's not been easy.
And, and the how doesn't always have to be money. It can be what you're doing today, and it can be going to classrooms and going to UVI and guest lecturing in the business program.
Is true.
It can be. There's so many different ways we can balance out our...
Yeah, and in terms of, I guess, focusing in on one of the entities that I've utilized, as a matter of fact, during the pandemic until now, more so than in the last 23 years, has been the 501c that I run. You know, partnering with Office of the Governor, I must say, and many agencies in the government, I mean, we have done so much in the last 3 years territorially for the first time, because normally we would do programs on the island of St. Croix. But territorially, from distributing thermometers to issuing mini grants to doing the awareness of the corona vaccine throughout the territory, the Office of the Governor, through funding of the federal government, funded the nonprofit. And then we executed several programs over the last 2 years. And we're about to launch another series.
Yeah, I want to
another series, not only Taste of St. Croix, which last year, even though the event was about 50% smaller than it was, we were able to contribute over $10,000 to 4 different programs, you know, throughout the community. And we plan to do the same this year. In addition to that, if the government supports, and they have informally said yes, we're about to launch territorially several initiatives to reconnect and prop up the hospitality industry that has done so terribly in the last 2 years, from training the front and back end employees to certification programs to surveys to understand. Because I don't think, as a matter of fact, I know there have not been any formal structure or entity that has really went out to find out. The hardest hit industry in the world right now since the pandemic has been the hospitality industry. But what areas were they impacted in? What 2, what 3, what 4 areas did we go out and ask? Do we know? There has not been a formal program. So we're about to launch that program to hear from them direct. How can we assist them, or what areas have they been affected by the most over the last 18?
We don't have too much more time. So tell us about the Taste of St. Croix, what's coming up next month.
Yes. So the annual Taste of St. Croix, as we all know, this will be our 23rd year.
Oh, 23rd.
It's normally in April, because we like to get the tail end of the tourist season, which officially ends every year in April. It's been challenging over the last few years, and it was challenging again because the hospitality industry just can't find employees. You know, not only are there an inflation in terms of costs and running business, but it was hard to ask them to do taste in April when they're trying to make some money with the peak season. We did a survey. We sent out a survey to them, and they overwhelmingly favored postponing it by 2 months so that they will be able to participate.
So what are the dates?
It's June 16th, 6 p.m. at the DB Carina Bay Resort and Casino.
Yeah. It says the 15th?
Yes, June 15th, Thursday, June 15th.
Oh,
yes.
I thought you said 16th.
And I love this poster. This
Yes.
is amazing. The concept is just...
Yes, Luca Gaspari, I want to thank him for 23 years designing.
Has he done it for 23
years?
I thought that said, Luca, this is beautiful. Should we hold it up? You're probably going to upload it somewhere, but this is beautiful.
Absolutely, very.
I love that
very
concept.
Nice indeed, you know.
And I just realized that that's that beautiful. Someone brought to my attention that that's that beautiful boat that stands out in Gallows Bay every year that comes in. The Roseway.
It used to be the Roseway, but
yes.
I don't know if it changed.
It's not here this year, but they actually emailed me 2 days ago asking me for a poster telling me that this is the Roseway. That's how I found out that this is officially the Roseway that normally came in and did training and tours with different sectors of the community.
So tell us, we have so many questions for you. I wish this was a longer program. Tell us how you balance your busyness, right, with your with the other aspects of your life? What do you do to, when you're not
when I'm
so busy?
And that's me. I always say this because I get asked a lot of the time, Collin, you don't work?
Oh, they ask if you don't work. Oh, okay.
Because they say you always look the same. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't work? I have so much jobs. I have plenty of jobs.
Okay.
You know, I'm intimately involved with Taste of St. Croix.
Yeah.
Subway, Orange Grove, which we haven't spoken about, but Subway, Orange Grove, Massive Management and Production, which I have diversified what we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago to what we do now. You know, I just started ABC Auto Sales and Rental 2 months ago. I have not even officially launched it yet. I am in business, have my licenses, started renting and selling cars, but I want to get that, you know, the feel of that before I officially launch it. On a grand scale to the community. But time management is the key. You know, I was fortunate in 1995, right out of UVI, to get a planning position in Pralex Pharmaceutical. And I was sent away for almost a month to be a planner at Pralex Pharmaceutical, which is the most regulated industry in the world, pharmaceuticals. So I learned to manage making a pin and everything that goes into that pin, and that process took as much as making a TV. So time management and, you know, handling every little material that and time and second in the day.
Well, I guess I was asking, what do you do when you're not working?
When I'm not working?
Yes.
I work all the time.
Work all the time, yeah.
No, you know, my 14-year-old daughter is my pride. You know, she'll be here in the next 4 weeks to spend the summer with me. I love traveling to see her. You know, my personal life definitely is one that I love playing domino. I love sports, I love basketball, and I like having a cigar once in a while. Yeah, believe me, and I love dining out too. Obviously, I grew up in the industry.
Tell us about some of your weaknesses, because we've heard a lot about your strengths. So what are your weaknesses?
I have a lot of weakness. You know, quick-tempered. But I'm a Aries. You know, I had a birthday last month, so you know.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, I had a birthday last month, so you know, I'm an Aries, so I have that trait that comes along with being an Arian. I think that's something I've worked on since my daughter born 14 years ago. That has really, you know, because I do so much, so I'm always on 10 because I've always had the responsibility to get everything done in 24 hours.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that is something I've worked on, and it has worked. I think because I came from a hospitality industry, I demand a lot from my vendors and my employees because I think that my customers deserve the best because I was trained from the old school way of service and hospitality.
So you don't just want to give customer service, you want to give customer satisfaction.
I want to make sure it's done the right way. And that's one thing I think that sometimes gets pushed back to me because everyone says, well, you ask for so much, because I think the customer deserves so much. And I think because I was taught in the 80s and in the age where the hospitality industry was booming, I'm glad that I was brought up in that era where we really had pride in giving service and not look down on it as servitude, which unfortunately a lot of us do in these times. We think that giving good customer service is like it's servitude. We think it's terrible to smile. We think that, you know, we should not give that extra thing to that customer, and I don't know how not to do that. I think the reputation I've gotten over the years, and I must say thank God that the community looked at what I deliver to be, you know, substantive, because I think it's because I've always demanded the best from who I do business with, and therefore I was able to deliver back to the community what they're asking for.
Well, you're out of this world.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
I got so much more goals to achieve.
Well,
I got so much more things to do. I really think that I am so far from reaching the goalposts of the things that I think God put me here to do.
Yeah? I hope at some point you do pat yourself on the back and sit down and say, wow, I've accomplished a lot, and allow yourself to feel that, how much you have done.
That's right. Community leader, you know, individual, visionary person who really looks out there and said, this needs to be done, and if other people are not going to do it, I'm going to do it. That's the kind of thing that I'm getting from you. And also making sure that people understand that we're here as the adults to pass on something worthy to the people who come behind us. And so we have to do whatever we can in that particular way. That must be our main goal and function.
Yeah.
But I want you to get the book together. Because with
book.
what, with all the things that you have done.
When you retire, right? When you slow down a little bit.
We need to get that so that could be passed on as part of the passing on plan for those folks who come behind. But don't worry, there are people who could help you to put one together. You have all the experience, all the massive productions and Taste of St. Croix. And that place you used to work somewhere over by Gallows Bay, there was some kind of business over there that you were involved in. I forget the name of it. Yeah, but there was one of them.
Prelex, that was the same one I mentioned earlier. Yes.
All right.
Well, yes. Well, I just want to remind everyone once again that the 23rd annual Taste of St. Croix happens Thursday, June 15, 6 p.m. at the DB Carina Bay Resort and Casino. Please, you can log on and get your tickets online right now at eventbrite.com. On Island tickets go out in a few weeks. But please remember to get your tickets. Limited supply will be available. Okay, that's the 23rd annual Taste of St. Croix.
And it will be just another venture for Mr. Collin Hodge. Well, that's just the reality.
A man of many talents,
and you're using them. And that's
I try. Yeah. I just want to say before we go, and this is just an advice and a suggestion, and one that I think I want to bring to everyone's attention, because it's not just, you see everything going on in the world, especially in the States, we watch TV, and I'm listening to them, you read the news, that youngster is involved with that older guy that is involved. That's because for the last 3 years, 6 years, that youngster was taught, not by her mom, not by the school system, but by unregulated sources, so they think it's okay. And that's what's going on, and that's why I really, even though I don't support socialism and communism, you can't have YouTube in Russia, in China, and in place, because that's what happened. We have unregulated social education.
We'll have to talk more about that.
Absolutely. Well, just want to thank you so much, and the best I could say is, and I'm sure that our good doctor here, Dara, would agree with that, just keep doing what you have to do to the best of your ability, and all of us benefit from that. So thank you very much, Mr. Collin Hodge. And of course, we got to thank our good friends here, and for keeping things ticking over.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, guys.
No problem. Yes, we could see what's going on,